Hello, Australia. Welcome to A&R News. This is the Raw Report. I'm your host, Ryan Jackson-Saw. Today, we're here with a very special guest. We have the very good pleasure of introducing Rhett Hackett. He's a co-founder and president of the Humanity Preservation Foundation and was first brought to the public eye 11 years ago on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and has since been a very powerful advocate for getting help to young men and women who have suffered abuse in younger lives. Welcome, Rhett.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate it. It's great. It's great that we're able to do this, and so happy for modern technology.
Oh, isn't it wonderful? So tell us, Rhett, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you come into the line of work that you're doing now?
Yeah, so I am a survivor of child sex abuse, and I, didn't address it professionally until 2005. And then in 2010, I had gone away on a retreat that was like an all men's, retreat that really kind of like brought it all together and clarified for me that, that the victim is never the blame. And it was in that moment that I knew I wanted to speak out. And 3 months later was the Oprah Winfrey Show put out a feeler. They wanted to do a special on 200 men, and I had submitted my name and found out that I was chosen to be on the show. And as I tell people all the time, I didn't want to just be on the show. I wanted to be on the show. And I had found out that I was going to be one of the 6 men that were filed for any of the pre-tape footage. And so I went public with my story. And in doing so, it catapulted me into the advocacy world. And I was speaking and doing TV and radio and magazines, and we did a play in New York. And but each time I was doing these, like if I was speaking at like a legislative breakfast or at like a college or a university, 98% of the time somebody came up to me afterwards and said, hey, this happened to me, or it happened to a loved one, or there was a time where like we'd be on the street and a stranger would come up to me and they'd be like, you're that guy that's going on Oprah, that was on Oprah, da, da, da. And one lady was hugging me and she was crying and she was telling me, thank you for telling our story. And I saw a greater need and knew that we needed to do something. I also knew too, as I had said to you, I professionally addressed it in 2005, and seeking any type of services at that time was just, it was dreadful. Like, because, we don't ask for help. That's something that we just don't do. And by the time we're ready for help, we're usually in a moment of despair. And that's how you end up finding help that's not very good. And I didn't want anybody to ever really go through that process. So that was the genesis behind creating the Humanity Preservation Foundation, which was to kind of sync up people and really kind of do the work for them in finding services, whether it's a book or legal or medical. But on the other side of that is to educate so that it doesn't happen. And we actually focused on 3 areas: child abuse, domestic violence, and bullying, because all 3 of them are a shade of the same color, and they're all related to one another. And that's kind of how it all began. So we are coming up on our 8th year of being a nonprofit foundation here in the United States. But we do, we help out coast to coast. And I actually have helped a gentleman that was in Australia back in 2017. He actually came over here, but I had been communicating with him for a number of years leading up to that. So,
well, that's absolutely wonderful, Rhett. Really appreciate that work that you're doing right now. It's definitely something that is massively underreported in this country, unfortunately. People find it very difficult to come forward. And when leaders like yourself step forward and tell your story, it really does provide a safer platform for people to reach out and get that help.
Yes.
What are the primary functions of the Humanity Preservation Foundation?
Yeah, so So we act as an intermediary to services. So what does that mean? So when somebody comes to us and they, say, "Hey, I've been victimized in one of the three areas that we work with," um, we will help direct them to services. We also educate. So one of those, that's getting into schools and to universities and to the general public in the business community, educating parents and teachers and students on, what to look for, and what can children look for so that they don't fall victim to somebody like that. Um, and um, it's it really is scary to think about how many children are possibly going to become victims based upon the numbers that are only just on reported. But in addition to that, so HPF, that's the shorter name for it, we recently just launched our recovery platform, because we know that addiction is often a sign of a greater circumstance, and that circumstance is often childhood trauma. So, and it doesn't even have to be direct childhood trauma. If a victim has been abused or neglected, or they have watched abuse in their home, such as domestic violence, we know that that leaves a mark on them and creates a hole. And often somebody is filling that hole with drugs or alcohol. So we know that since it is a symptom of a greater issue, if you're not resolving that core issue, you're going to have continued issues. So we recently just launched. We have 2 online meetings a week. I'm sorry, and really what we focused on is, after you've gone through recovery, how do you pick up the pieces of life again? So that many people that have gone through either addiction or domestic violence, they don't have a bank account or a resume or looking for a job, and if the expectation is for people to get back up on their feet, how can you do that if you don't give them all the tools? And that's really kind of like what we want to do and are doing as we're moving along. So we launched in August, but have really gone full throttle as of October 1st. So and really, I kind of hinted to it a little bit on the whole modern technology and you and I being able to do this, but that is what is allowing us to be able to do an outreach, because everything is online. So even if there was somebody struggling in your neck of the woods where you live, they would be able to dial in for one of our meetings, or at least become part of that community, so that they know that they're not alone. And I think that anybody that is in some sort of trauma or struggle, really, you always think that it's just you. You always think that you're the only one that's going through it. And something magical happens when you get in front of other individuals and you learn, oh, I'm not alone. Like, it's not just me. And as you learn more and you find out that it was never your fault, that's a game changer.
What have you noticed that happens for individuals who come forth and are able to get that therapy, able to do that connecting? Do you notice that there's a tendency to improve other aspects of their life, not just emotionally, but also in their physical life?
Yeah, without question, you can see it. As a matter of fact, um, it's the juice that keeps me going. When you see that happen, and you watch somebody's life transform, and that they become, I don't know, self-independent, if you want to call it, or not living in it, but living with it, because we know that that type of abuse and stuff doesn't just go away, and that's first and foremost whenever I'm working with somebody, is for them to understand that this is something. It's not like a cold where it goes away and everything's fine, but it is, there's an energy behind it when you watch somebody that has really been down in the bottom and get them up to the top, and really direct them in a way where they're able to thrive and they're able to live. And because through the path there's often a lot of carnage that happens along the way, and it's unfortunate, and some relationships are destroyed through the process, but there's also through the recovery end of all of that, there is this thing that happens where you have individuals that get themselves into a job and a better career and repair some of the relationships along the way. They become great mothers and fathers and brothers, and it really is awesome. And does it happen for everybody? No. This is a laptop. It's not a magic wand. And but when somebody wants to put in the work, then there will be a yield to it. And that's what we really try to stress with individuals, is that you can do it, and it's there. And we're happy to help along the way. And I tend to work with people that want to do the work. That's it, it's the most important piece to that. So and part of that is some sort of type of mental therapy, counseling, mental health, which I don't know if this is the right time or not, but it's going to become very critical in the years to come, because of everything that took place with people being quarantined. I really have been speaking hard on the fact that we are on the edge of what will become probably the biggest crisis of mental health and addiction, as we come to realize the impact of what it was like for individuals that were trapped in homes 24/7 with an abusive person. When there are children in which the only break they get from abuse of 8 hours is when they go to school, and now that's gone too. What do you think the damage is going to be from that? What do you think the damage is going to be as a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old is watching their father that's victimizing their mother in a domestic violence situation? And it's not to say that it doesn't happen where it's a female against a male, but 93% of the cases here in the United States are male to female. So that's what I used for that. But that is going to have a negative effect. And my biggest concern is that we will look at those individuals as, oh, well, those were the people that were quarantined. And that's why they're doing that. But that's not the reason why their behavior has changed. That's not why they're not doing well in school. That's not why they're getting involved in drugs or alcohol. It's because they're trying to self-soothe an open wound. And so I'm trying to do whatever I can to speak out about that.
What kind of negative mental patterns or emotional patterns can you see that might be coming out of these COVID lockdowns? We've had states like Victoria with the longest lockdowns in the world. And so it must have such a significant impact on these kids' minds, who can't see their friends at school, who can't go outside. And if they do have an abusive set of parents and they're just locked in their house all the time with them, what do you think's going to...
Yeah. Well, what you're going to see is we know that often children become lethargic. They also tend to isolate themselves away from groups, exit themselves out of participating in things. Their grades may go down. They may become antisocial, or you may see behavior in which they're acting out and doing things intentionally. And because this is what we know, is that children don't communicate abuse and trauma and all that. They act out. They communicate through actions, and those actions are the flags that people have to pick up on. So when you start to see a child that's like digressing into behavior that is not appropriate, there's a reason for that. And in some cases, it can be an older child that goes back to bedwetting. And that's a sign that something has happened. And whatever their dialogue and their narrative is as they're speaking sometimes will be a trigger. Children of a young age that are speaking of sexual terms learn that from somebody. It doesn't just come to them. And those are the things that we can educate parents on to look and talk about. Now, does it make it harder when it's inside of the home? Absolutely. But teachers and educators and individuals that, if they're doing an online Zoom and listening to the narrative of a child or the behavior of them, maybe that's the key or things to look for.
Well, what advice would you have for parents who may notice that their kids are starting to act out, starting to go to negative patterns like that?
Well, first and foremost, one of the things that, whenever we're talking to parents, even if there's no abuse whatsoever, just in their home, is to have an open platform for dialogue, no matter what that dialogue is. And in doing so, you start to teach inside of your home that the secret home, so that there aren't secrets that are hidden, and that the other thing is to have a narrative in which you're able to speak about body parts by their rightful name. So we don't have nicknames for fingers, we call them fingers. So the same things should be for our anatomy of our body parts, such as a penis or a vagina, or that's how kids will feel comfortable just speaking about it to their parents. So that's number one, and that kind of starts very early on, but it can start as soon as tomorrow if you haven't been doing that. So having said that, once you have established that, or maybe you're just trying to, it's really just kind of having a conversation with your child and letting them know that no matter what it is that they tell you, that they're not going to get themselves in trouble if somebody has been hurting them, or if they feel unsafe in a situation. It's a great question to ask somebody, because children can identify with that than just saying, are you okay? Has anybody touched you? Has anybody hurt you? Because those are the things that will make somebody feel like kind of like clammed up. But when you say, hey, when you go to school, or when you go over to the babysitters, or when you go here, do you feel safe? Do you feel comfortable? Those are the things that children can identify with, safe versus unsafe.
Yeah. Well, we have a major problem with underreporting, unfortunately, in this country. They say that only 0.1% of people have been in any way abused, officially by statistics, but anyone who talks to anyone knows that it's much higher than that. How do you think we should address the underreporting that's happening right now?
Well, it is probably one of the greatest challenges. I'm not going to lie. And, that comes from a couple different things. Number one, it comes from individuals that are just in a state of shame because of what happened. And it also comes from families in which there is a family member has abused or victimized a child, because they don't want the family to be shamed. Those are things we don't talk about. We don't want anybody, and that creates that. So, it's really very difficult for people to come forward and to speak the truth of that this happened to them. But I think that as we transition, because I can tell you when I was in school, and even back 11 years ago when I had first done the Oprah show, we weren't having conversations like this. They really just didn't exist, especially as it related to men. And so that's going to help to shift things. Now, as for what has happened for generations of the individuals that are living today and never spoke their truth, it's really hard for an individual. And, the only thing that I know that I can do is to continue to speak out and to continue to let people know that it's okay that this happened to you, that it wasn't your fault, and that you can move beyond it. And as it relates to children and young adults that are living in the world, the number one thing that we tell individuals is that you are like, if you are in that type of situation, you keep telling it until you get from unsafe to safe. And no matter who doesn't believe you, just keep talking. And so it's kind of like this a dual thing. So on my side of things, I'm just going to keep on talking. I'm going to keep on talking about it until we get to a better place with it. And I encourage children to do the same thing they're living in a situation in which there is some sort of violence or trauma, and to speak out and let people know that this is going on, because the sooner that it stops, the sooner you can start to heal. And on the side of, for those that have gone through something and they haven't really spoken about it or addressed it, we know that we do a good job on our own beating ourselves up through our own trauma. And the sooner that we resolve that, the sooner we stop our own self-talk in a negative way. And that's really when the healing can begin.
Now, we've basically got a bit of what they call a mental health crisis happening in the country right now. They say that 12.7% of people aged 16 to 24 right now are experiencing substance abuse. Do you have any advice that you can give to young people, techniques, ways that you can sort of break that pattern to move away from the substance abuse into something more healthy?
Yeah, it's it's really hard with individuals that are youth that are currently using. To educate them is great, and I believe in that. But we know that, and I know just from my own personal self that probably from about age 15 to about 30, we don't think that anything's ever going to happen to us, that it can hurt us. That's not going to happen to me. But I really think that, um, again, it comes down to education, and it comes down to having resources available, and continuing to put it out there, continuing to speak about it in the home, continuing to speak about it in the school system. And really, um, I think that's the primary thing that we can do. I know that's what I try to do. And and do it in a way that addresses um, kind of like a cause and effect. So the child that is bullying and wants to be accepted ends up self-soothing through drugs or alcohol, or trying to just get into a group in which they feel like they are welcomed. And of course that is going to welcome them, because that's how the addiction process all kind of like ties in together. And in doing so, I think at that point, children are able to identify with the circumstances. They can start to see themselves that, hey, that is me. So if we go from, here's the circumstance, here's the cause, here's the effect, and then here's the long-term effect of what happens, by having individuals that are speaking their story, I think that's when somewhat of reality will come in. And I've seen that through my own presentations. I've seen that through individuals that presented, members from our team, as well as organizations that we've partnered up with. And kids just look at individuals and think, oh, that could never happen. And then when you find out that, oh, geez, it really can, and it did with this individual. And of course, you'll always have a small population that looks at it and says, oh, well, that's because they did this. I don't do that. But I really think that there's such power in story. And that is one of the reasons why when you asked me to do this, I was 100% on it. And I appreciate the fact that, just you opening a platform and reporting on it makes a difference every single time.
Well, anytime we talk about this with each other and we open up the doors to conversation, that is a pathway towards healing. Rhett, if people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do that?
So yeah, they can go to www.hpfus.org, and they can reach us that way. That's our website. And you can also find me on Facebook under just Rhett Hackett. Instagram is Rhett1899, but really, Facebook Rhett Hackett is a good one. And then I do want to give a shout out to, so our recovery platform is recoveryourway.org. It's everything just exactly as it's spelled. I'll tilt the screen and there's the sign up there. And people can follow us on our website. They can follow us on Facebook. They can join in a meeting because it's through Zoom. We post the link. And I'm happy to help anybody out. Honestly, it doesn't matter where you live. I really set out to let people know that they were just not alone. And all it takes is for one person to see another person, and hear them speaking about it to make a difference. It's incredible. And, like I said, I helped out a gentleman in your neck of the woods, and it was one of the best experiences ever. And he's doing well.
That's wonderful to hear. So would you like to tell a little bit about that story, just as almost like a case study? Like what process happened when that gentleman contacted you?
Yeah, so actually, it was his mom that she saw the Oprah show. I think she saw it on, she saw it online, but she found me through Facebook. And it was very early on in doing what I do now. And she had sent me a message and, told me the story of her son, what had happened. And then she connected the dots between him and I. And there was times when, the three of us were speaking. There were times when I was speaking with him, and they were in the midst of their taking the perpetrator to court. And he lived in Strathalbyn. Am I saying that correctly?
Sure, I think so.
Okay. Forgive my American accent. And so unfortunately, the case kept getting postponed. And in the end, unfortunately, his perpetrator was not held accountable. And that's a devastating moment for any individual. And she reached out to me and she asked me if I would be willing to have him come over here to the United States and just kind of like get out of that environment, come someplace new, a little bit refreshing, and be with somebody that can really speak to the same circumstances of what happened. And that's exactly what we did. And by that time, he was 24 years old. He actually celebrated his 25th birthday here. And there's something very, I don't know, healing in regards to just being able to sit with someone and to ask the questions that like you don't always get to ask, like, why do I feel this way? Why did this happen? How can I feel better? And really just kind of like working through it. And the truth is that while everybody thrives to seek justice when they have been an injustice has happened, we also know from this side of the healing spectrum that you don't have to have that to heal and to move on, because you have the power to change your life. And if you staying in those circumstances, and that person who violated you or hurt you, they still have a hold on you. And the greatest freedom is to release that, whatever that is. And whether it's through forgiveness or through better understanding or through education, and that's what really worked in regards to understanding that I'm no less of a person because this happened, and that I can rise above. And that was kind of like the magic behind it. And we spent a lot of one-on-one time just kind of and ironically, we were interviewed here in the United States by one of our local radio stations. And I don't know, it was amazing. And I am still friends with the family. He is now married with 3 children. And with, if nothing else, just a better understanding of A, it wasn't his fault, and B, that yeah, this is going to be with me for the rest of my life, but it doesn't have to be my life, and it doesn't have to destroy my life. And will any one of us that have been victimized have a bad day? Of course we will. Who doesn't? But we also know that you can get beyond a bad day or a bad moment or a bad thought, and that things will be okay. I don't know if that was really kind of the primary purpose of him coming over. And his mom and I still refer to him as how's our boy, like, because he kind of like became like almost like another son. And that's something that is super important. And I don't know, I just think that when somebody needed an ally, it was the right time, and that's what we were able to provide here.
I absolutely love your message about especially forgiveness. I mean, it might have been 15, 20, 30 years after an event happened, and yet that perpetrator is still attacking you over and over in your own memories. But that act of forgiveness is giving it away completely. And
Absolutely.
just stone. I love that.
Yeah. And it took me a long time to get there. Because forgiveness, first of all, is for you. It's never for them. But forgiveness is also determined by what you're going to do. Like what does forgiveness look like for you? And then how do you apply that into this circumstance? And you know, and in regards to like bringing somebody to justice, for my own personal story, I was attempting to do that. I was prepared to, and I, right, right as I was about to, I had found out that he had died 3 weeks beforehand. I had known that he was alive, and that's what put me on the path to say, okay, I'm gonna report it, and I'm gonna, seek justice. And I felt in that particular moment at that time, it was very early on in therapy, that I felt like he got away. And more so, when I looked up his obituary, they were hailing him as a war hero. And I just thought to myself, my goodness, like he is so far from being a hero. But I came to terms with it and just realized that, you know what, I, I I just forgive you for the circumstances that took place. And I know that justice would be handled in another way, whatever lifetime that is. But that's not for me to decide. And my goal, my focus was I just wanted to move beyond and live my life, not really knowing at that time where it was going to go and the type of work that I would be doing. But I'm sure glad that I did, because I didn't want to be held up on that. And that's something that he did, and he's the one that's going to have to live with that in whatever world we live in. I certainly didn't need to.
Well, external justice seems to happen in the courtrooms, but internal justice seems to happen with letting go of that hate and that guilt and that trauma that's associated with another person, and completely
Yeah,
yourself moving on and letting go.
yeah. And nothing's better than like just hurdling over that and becoming successful. And not that that's success is defined by who you are and what you want to do. And I really focus on taking care of myself. And I'm a big advocate for the gym. Physical fitness is one of the best recovery methods in any shape or form. I guess, let's see, October, November, about 5 months after doing the Oprah show, maybe 6 months, I stopped smoking. So it's coming up on 11 years that I haven't smoked a cigarette, and really just kind of like taking care of myself. Because I just real quick, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but there was a study that was done called the ACE study. It stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And what that study really talked about was that those who face childhood trauma have a greater risk down the road as an adult, for all kinds of health diseases, cancer, hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, drug and alcohol abuse, imprisonment, early death. So in that spectrum there, knowing that and being educated on that, I knew that I was going to have to take care of myself just a little bit more than the average person, because you're at a risk of, and it all ties back to the whole, in the moments of trauma, you have a surge of cortisol and what it does to the brain and all of that. So I wanted to make sure that, knowing that I live like that to the best of my ability, and but also communicate that out as well too. That's why getting to a resolution, not living in forgiveness and repeating that story in your head, is the same as, it's almost just like re-victimizing yourself. So sorry, a little bit of a left turn there, but
Not a problem. I just want to thank you again, Rhett. The work that you're doing is making us all stronger. We're all better off. The more we speak about this and come together, great organizations like yours helping people to heal and to take back the power in their lives, it's absolutely invaluable. Thank you for that.
Ryan, I appreciate that to a level that I don't know if there's enough words to say thank you. Just because you clearly get it. And I love that. And certainly you're always invited to attend any one of our recovery meetings if you want to just see what that looks like. And but yeah, I mean, I encourage people to reach out to me, to get in touch with me, and ask questions. I'm very open in regards to this type of stuff, because we don't ask these questions. And so when you by just providing a platform and saying, okay, we're going to talk about this, you're creating change, and it's huge. It's so huge.
Well, for any of our listeners out there right now, if you've gone through trauma, if you've gone through abuse, reach out to Rhett, reach out for great organizations like his or Beyond Blue or organizations here in Australia as well, and get that support and help you need. Because that healing path starts with just one choice, and it can start right now if you wish it to. Thank you again, Rhett. Is there any final messages that you have for our listeners right now?
Yeah, here's what I will say is that if anybody watching this or listening to this and you were able to connect the dots in some way, or it's the shade of a color in your life, then I just really want people to understand that they're not alone. They've really not alone. And whatever has happened to you, I know for a fact has happened to others, and that, healing is possible. And if you are struggling with addiction or trying to resolve some sort of trauma, help is out there. And, we're willing to help you out, and just know that you're not alone. And it's very sad for somebody who doesn't think that there's anybody out there for them. And I guess the final message for me would be to let them know that there really is. And whether it's people like you, people like myself, or like my organization, or like Recover Your Way, we're here. So
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rhett.
absolutely, Ryan. Thank you. Thank you for doing this.